From Nashville, Tennessee, this is Catching Up with the Crawfords. I'm super excited today to have as my special guest Mr. Thomm Jutz. Thomm is a Grammy-nominated songwriter, producer, and musician. He's currently the IBMA Songwriter of the Year, and I hope you'll stick around and listen as he talks about the last two albums that we were able to work on together. Today's episode is being sponsored and underwritten by the Crawford Property Group, servicing the greater Nashville and surrounding areas. We also service Northeast Tennessee, Southwest Virginia, down through Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, and Sevierville. We're licensed in Tennessee, Virginia, Florida, and California. We're selling homes from Dollywood to Hollywood. And now to our special guest, Mr. Thomm Jutz. Thomm, thank you so much for being here.
Good to see you again.
Well, first of all, let me start off by saying congratulations on being nominated again for Songwriter of the Year.
It's the IBMA Songwriter of the Year, so the International Bluegrass Music Association Songwriter of the Year. So it's not a Grammy or anything. I have been nominated for a Grammy, but this is a different story. But nevertheless, I'm very appreciative of this community, and it's a great honor to be nominated with our mutual friend Tim Stafford and some other.
You also teach songwriting, correct?
I do. I'm an instructor of songwriting at Belmont University here in Nashville. Belmont is a Christ-centered university. We have a songwriting program. We have about 9,000 students. It's a private university. We have a songwriting program that has about 400 students at this point. It's grown massively over the last 10 years or so, and it's something that I really love doing. You know, I spend 2-3 days a week hanging out with very talented young people. Not everybody is admitted into that program. It's an admissions-based program, so people have to submit songs and lyrics, and it's a very prominent and popular program at this point. So we have people applying from all over the United States, some people from Europe, some people from Southeast Asia, and it's a cool thing to be hanging with talented young people and hopefully being able to instill a sense in them what great writing is, and also a sense that success is one thing in the music business, but leading a creative and fulfilled life is more important than that. And so hopefully we'll make a little dent.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're not originally from America.
No. I was born in the Black Forest of Germany, raised by wolves, and that's my spiel that I've been using for the past 20 years. I was born in Germany. My parents are German. I grew up playing music, classical music. I started very early when I was like 5 or 6 years old, playing the piano and the flute, and was very encouraged by my parents to do that. And when I was in October of 1981, when I was just about to turn 12 years old, I saw a guy called Bobby Bear, who's in the Country Music Hall of Fame, a wonderful singer and country music artist. I saw him on a German TV show, and I vividly remember that moment. Something snapped in my little kid brain, and I knew that this music spoke to me on a really, really deep level, and that I wanted to dedicate my life to making that kind of music. It was a very simple decision to make as a 12-year-old, or almost 12-year-old. It would be much harder to make such a decision later in life when you reflect on it more. But literally that music, that he played 2 songs, Detroit City and Pour Me Another Tequila, Sheila, and Lay Down and Love Me Again, which are obviously powerful words when you're 12 years old. But it all joking aside, it spoke to me on a core level. And being an adult now, I understand that I saw an archetype. I saw the archetype, as Carl Jung would describe an archetype of the creator, of the artist, and that was something that just really spoke to me. And so, since that day, I've never done anything other than music-related things, and it's been I've been very fortunate. So, but back to your question, I'm not originally from America. True. Another contributing factor other than the music was that I got to know my wife when she moved back from the United States. In Germany. She had lived in the States for 5 years because her dad worked here. And when she came back to Germany, we were in the same classroom. I was 15 and she was 14, and we fell in love. We've been together ever since. So that's 37 years, 38 years at this point. And she always wanted to move back to America, and I always wanted to move to Nashville because of my love for country music. And so we just had to wait till we could do that. And in our case, that was possible by winning the diversity lottery, which is also called the Green Card lottery. And so I entered 2 years in a row, and the second year, my name was drawn, and if you're married, your spouse gets a green card as well. So we moved here in October of 2003, almost 20 years ago. 2 months from our 20-year anniversary here in the States. And then after 5 years, you can become a citizen, which we did. And that's that. Never looked back. Still enjoy going there to visit, but this is my home, and this is where I belong.
Interesting. That's a really cool story to tell. And I actually, when I was thinking about talking to you, and I thought, how's a guy from Germany fall into bluegrass and folk type music? And so there's the story.
Yeah, and those kind of musics are connected somehow. German folk music is not very prominent anymore for the very reason that German folklore had been so abused by the Nazi regime that people just shut that out and don't listen to that music anymore. That doesn't mean that it didn't exist in a very innocent way at some point. And that original folk music especially from the Alpine regions of Germany, Switzerland, and Austria has connections to Celtic music, to English music, to Celtic music from Scotland, Ireland, and so forth. Certain songs that people consider bluegrass standards today, like the Storms Out on the Ocean, are actually the melodies of German folk songs. So music is a funny thing, it's all interconnected. And that's part of my interest, I wanted to live in a culture where music was a living part of what people do. And where I come from, that was, for the reasons I just gave, that was not the case anymore. And I missed that. I had been to Ireland and places like that and was fascinated how much the original music of the place was a part of how people lived. And I wanted to experience that. I couldn't necessarily probably articulate that at that point, but today I can.
Well, I want to talk a little bit or have you talk a little bit about, first of all, I'm grateful and thankful for you that you allowed me to be a part of a few of your projects.
Oh, well, thank you.
And first one was an album called Lost Voices that you did, as you've mentioned earlier, writing with Tim Stafford. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because when you talk about your background, mm-hmm. what I was impressed with you was your heart for history mm-hmm. and research and things like that. So tell me a little bit about Lost Voices.
So Tim Stafford and I have been friends for many years. Tim is an incredibly good songwriter, guitar player, and singer. He's in a bluegrass band called Blue Highway. They've been together for almost 30 years. Tim is also a historian, and I'm not a historian, but we share this love for history. And Tim and I had written some songs together over the past 5 years, but not a lot, maybe 10 songs or so. And then the pandemic hit, and we all had to learn as songwriters, if we still wanted to co-write, meaning writing songs with other people, we had to learn to do it on Zoom instead of in person. So Tim and I, Tim living in Kingsport, East Tennessee, and me living here, we just jumped on that. We just turned it into an opportunity, and instead of only writing together once or twice a year when he came to town, we wrote at least once a week, most of the time, though twice a week, over the course of the pandemic. So within 2 years, we had a catalog of about probably 130, 140 songs. And I have this recording studio here, so whenever I have, if I feel strongly about collaborating with somebody, it's an easy-ish thing for us to make a record. And I like making records, and I like making records with other people, and I like being in a room with musicians. So we just decided, hey, let's pick our favorite songs and make a record. And it turned out that the songs we picked this was not a conceptualized idea, but once we started looking at these songs more in depth, we realized that all of those songs dealt with voices that were lost or had been forgotten to some degree. Black baseball team from Elizabethton, Tennessee, the Blue Grays, that recently had been rediscovered through the work of a foundation up there that did incredible work. And so that's one example. Another example is a recording that I heard of choir music that was composed to be performed at the Hagia Sophia, the famous church/mosque in Istanbul. And the was profoundly moving to me, so that found its way into a song called Lost Voices, which is the title song of the record. Then there's a song about Emmett Miller, the great vaudeville singer, whose voice there's only a couple of recordings of him, but we still remember his music because he was the guy who first, one assumes, wrote, but certainly sang Lovesick Blues, which became a big hit for Hank Williams. And Hank Williams performed it to 7 encores on the Grand Ole Opry, and then it would influence Bob Wills and Merle Haggard and people like that. So it's just, we like to, I find the outside world more interesting to write about than my internal world. I think a lot of especially young songwriters make the mistake that all they want to write about is their autobiographical material, and often as it relates to their romantic life, which is very interesting to somebody who's 18 years old, but not very interesting to a lot of other people. And I'm not 18, and I'm a very happily married man, so I have very little to write about when it comes to heartbreak and things like that. So I'd rather, and I think it's just more interesting. And I think it's important to keep things alive through song. That's what these old folk songs do. They keep stories alive. People used to sing about storms and shipwrecks and train wrecks and murders and all that, and why don't we do that anymore? Because everything's on TV. And on social media, everything is watered down. But I think there's a better way of telling these stories. Also a more impartial way of telling these stories that doesn't divide, but just tells the story. And then people can make up their mind whatever they want to hear in that.
Well, I think when you listen to that album and you hear some of those stories, and it was interesting to me as I filmed you and Tim doing the interviews, talking about those songs, how y'all came up with those things. Now, the second project I worked was really different because you were going to film half of it in America and half of it in England.
Correct.
So talk a little bit about that album.
It's an album that's going to be released in September. The first single just came out, so it came out in June, and we have another one coming out in early August. It's a project called Nothing But Green Willow, the songs of Mary Sands and Jane Gentry. Now, these songs had been collected between 1916 and 1918 in southwestern Appalachia by an Englishman called Cecil Sharp, who was a folk song collector. He was looking for English folk songs that people in England didn't remember anymore, but he knew that people in Appalachia were still singing these songs because a lady called Olive Dame Campbell, who lived in East Tennessee, was a friend of his, and she told him, there's a treasure trove of songs here. If you want to come here, I'll point you in the right direction. So he came to Appalachia with his assistant, Mark Carpellis, and they took the train to Asheville, which was as far as they could go by train, and then they walked, or they went on horseback, or whichever way they could go, and they went from farm to farm, wherever somebody said, hey, this person knows a song that you might be interested in, and he wrote down the lyrics, and he wrote down the music to the songs. They didn't have recording equipment. Recording equipment was in existence at that time, but it was very bulky, so you couldn't carry it around on a mule back. And so he wrote down the music, and she wrote down the lyrics, and they collected over 1,200 songs that way. And some of those songs are songs that people still sing today, like the Gypsy Laddie, which is also known as Blackjack Davy, or Come All You Fair and Tender Ladies, which is a song that the Whites still perform on the Grand Ole Opry regularly. So these songs have come a long way, hundreds of years. Nobody knows who wrote them. They're every bit as meaningful today as they were when they were conceived of, if you want to call it that, because they weren't really written. There's no composers, If we could ask the people who sang these songs for Sharp, is this your song? They would probably say, like, no, I've just known this song forever. And so, it's like I said, it's a really big collection. It's 2 books, and I've long been fascinated with this collection. But it was very difficult for me to figure out how to approach that in the context of a recording project because it's such a vast collection. So, Topic Records, and I was introduced to Topic Records in England. They, in turn, introduced me to Martin Simpson, who's one of the greatest acoustic guitar players in the world, and also has equal authority in interpreting English music and American music, because he grew up being fascinated by people like Bill Kazee and old-time banjo players, American banjo players. But he can speak both languages, if you will, English folk music, American folk music. And when we were introduced, we hit it off really quickly, and we decided we noticed that there were two women who contributed a huge portion to Sharp's collection. One was Jane Gentry from Hot Springs, North Carolina, who contributed over 80 songs. And the other lady was Mary Sands, who lived in a place called Allen's Stand, which is very close to Hot Springs, North Carolina, and she contributed, I think, almost 30 songs. I can't remember right now. So that got our attention. We went like, whoa, these people lived like not even 20 miles from each other. Did they know each other? We don't know. Did they know of each other? We don't know. Did they ever meet each other, knowingly or unknowingly? We don't know. But they both women, both simple country women, especially Mary Sands. Jane Gentry ran a boarding house that's still in Hot Springs, North Carolina. They changed the course of American folk music by contributing these songs to Sharp's collection. Some of them were recorded not even 10 years later, or at the Bristol sessions by Ralph Peer, or some later, like in Bill Kazie's instance, he recorded a song called The Wagoner's Lad that's on this record in 1928. So a mere 10 years after they were collected by Sharp. And that's really fascinating about folk music. So in 1916, 17, 18, you have Sharp writing down these melodies and these lyrics in the mountains of Appalachia. In 1927, you have Peer recording the Big Bang of country music in Bristol. Bill Kazie in 1928 recording for the Brunswick label in New York. In 1952, those recordings come out on Harris Smith's anthology of American folk music, which Bob Dylan sinks his teeth into as a young guy when he's 21 years old, or even younger than that, coming to New York City. He learns from these songs, he internalizes those songs, turns them into his music. Joan Baez records these songs, Pete Seeger records these songs, and I think we need to record them too. We need to record them again. The great American musician and songwriter Norman Blake says that somebody alive has to do something with the old songs. So you can't just leave them in the book. They'll sit there, but you have to do something with them. You have to give them new meaning, new life. And so that's what we tried to do. And the idea was to record. So Martin picked 6 songs. I picked 6 songs. And then Martin paired those songs with English singers that he knew, English folk singers that he knew would be, or thought would be a good match for this project. And I I identified 6 singers from here, from the Appalachian side. Sarah Hall, Dalen Bradley, Tim singing 1, 2, Odessa Settles, wonderful lady here in Nashville whose family history goes way, way back, and especially as it relates to African American gospel music. And so we recorded here, as you know, you were here to film that, and then we spent like 4 or 5 days here recording, and then we got on a plane together and flew to England and recorded the rest there. And it was super interesting to see how this place informs how people sing and perceive music, and the place over there in England does something different. Place is very important. I think place is very important in writing songs and interpreting songs. Place is important because you interact with people differently. So all of that. It's all weird, esoteric stuff, but I'm into it.
Well, it's very interesting, and again, to sit and watch you guys do what you do, and then to hear you tell about why you do what you do, is just very interesting to me. And
well, let me say something to that. Of course, I'm really. I know that you found that process very interesting, and I do too. But in the moment when we recorded this music, and you were there for that, you saw the people walk in the door, and half an hour later we had to finish recording. Sometimes even less time than that. It's not conceptualized or intellectualized at that moment. In that moment, it's just about the music. 2 guitars, 1 singer, and you're done. The way I'm talking about it now seems like it's a very academic sort of approach to it, but it's really not in the moment. In the moment, it's just making music.
You mentioned earlier how you were influenced by a few people when you were in Germany as a kid. Is there any other major influences that influence how you do what you do?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I distinctly remember it was a weird process, you know, because I lived in a really small town, more like a village, and we were a middle class family. My parents were both teachers, but obviously there was no internet at that time, and there was one local record store, and the selection was very limited. So once I developed that interest in country music, I had to wait till we made a trip once or twice a year to the next bigger city where they had a couple of record stores. And then I had to, on a very limited budget, figure out what am I going to buy so I can listen to this music, you know. And so I distinctly remember buying the first Bob Dylan record. It was a greatest hits collection. I think it was all the way up to Blonde on Blonde or something like that. So the sound of his early recordings with just him and the guitar, that really influenced me. Then through coincidence, just through a photo that spoke to me on an album cover, I discovered Doc and Merle Watson. So that really, you know, that's a big shift in terms of how he played the guitar and all of that. So that informed a lot. I bought a Dan Fogelberg record called High Country Snows because I saw that Doc Watson played on it and Jerry Douglas played on it and Ricky Skaggs played on it. And it's not my favorite bluegrass record anymore at this point by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a record that did something, you know, that informed something. So it was just like jumping from one stone to the next and just piecing the music together.
You have your own studio, and you talked earlier about if you have a collaboration you want to do, you just call somebody up and they come, and you can do that because you have access to things that you know make this music. I know you talked about Whispering Bill Anderson. Mm-hmm. You did a thing for him and Dolly Parton here recently.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not like I can just call up anybody and go like, "Do you want to make a record?" That's not really how it works. But I have you know, people like Tim and Tammy Rogers. We've made a duo record here together, and I did something with Mike Compton, who's a great mandolin player. And so, it also takes a lot of time to do that. You can't make 3 a year of that, you know. So, but yeah, Bill Anderson is obviously a legendary songwriter. He's had #1 hits in 7 consecutive decades. Nobody else has done that. He's been on the Grand Ole Opry longer than anybody at this point. He still writes every day. He's 85 years old. He wants to be active, and we became good friends. We were introduced by one of my best friends, a guy called Peter Cooper, who sadly passed away last December. And Bill and I just hit it off, became good friends. And Bill likes to come out here and work on demos. And one day, I guess it's about 2 years ago at this point, we recorded a demo of a new song here that Bill was very excited about. And he liked the way the recording came together. And he said, "Boy, wouldn't it be great to have Dolly sing a duet with me on this?" And I was like, "Well, is there any song that wouldn't be good for Dolly to sing on?" And so Bill being Bill, he called Dolly's management and she sang on that song. She didn't come here. She did it at her studio and sent the track over. But it's a magical performance, and I got to meet her together with Bill, and they shot the video for the song. And you know, Bill remembers when Dolly had just moved here from East Tennessee, and Owen Bradley, his producer at the time, said, there's this new girl here in town. You should use her on a demo as a singer," and he did. So they go way, way back. And Dolly's obviously, I mean, she's such an iconic figure, somebody who always manages to speak her mind and never makes anybody mad. I think that's a great gift, and a wonderful singer, and often overlooked because of her persona. An incredible songwriter, one of the best American songwriters ever.
But I want to, if people want to follow Thomm Jutz, where can they find your music and best way to access it?
Well, probably the easiest way to see what I've been doing is to go to my website, which is thommjutz.com, and that's THOMMJUTZ.com. And it's always updated in terms of new music and where you can get it. And you know, music, it's everywhere. It's on Apple Music, it's on Spotify, it's on whatever, Amazon, I suppose. Yeah, I would love for people to check it out. But I think you probably also have some good footage from our recording session here, so you're more than welcome to use that.
Okay, great. And then they can also follow you on your social media.
Yeah, I'm on social media. I'm not super adept at social media, but I have some people who tell me what I'm supposed to do, and then I do it.
I always like to use this platform from our standpoint to everybody we talk to who have some specific genre that they do, whether it's music or whether, we're in LA on set doing behind the scenes for movies and things like that. We always take those interviews and we say, what advice would you give to the younger generation coming up to keep doing what they're doing and to pursue their dream? What influence would you offer to them as good advice and encouragement, I guess I would say?
Well, I think you have to do whatever you do in the world of the arts because you love it. If you do it because you want to make a lot of money or you want to be famous, I think you're starting on the wrong end. You have to do it for the love of it. And then you might make a living at it, you might be successful at it. There's no guarantees for that. Anything in the world of music, as I understand it and have experienced it, you can set a goal, but you should never expect that there's a straight path to that. It's always going to be zigging and zagging, and that's okay. That's the way it is. You learn a lot along the way, but you have to do it for the love of it. Like when I get up in the morning and I play my guitar or work on a song, or it's late in the evening and I play my guitar, that's when I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, because it fulfills me. It gives me a place in the universe, and I'm fortunate that I found that. I'm afraid that not a lot of people get to experience that. And I think a lot of people overlook it because everything is so busy. We're so oversaturated by everything. But if you can find those moments where you really connect to your craft, be it poetry or being a novelist or a guitar player or a singer or an actor or a person playing sports or whatever, just find something that makes you vibrate, where you go like, this is exciting. I'm excited to do that.
Yeah, especially here lately, we're hearing a lot of talk about people saying just follow your dreams. And, we're all put here for a reason. There's a divine appointment for all of us being here on this earth at this particular time. And is there anything that you tried to pursue that you just absolutely knew, this is not me?
No, I've not done that. I have a very clear idea of what I want to do and how I want to do it. Sometimes I have to compromise like everybody else on the how, but no, I've never done anything where I went like, yeah, this is going to work out great. Not because I'm so smart, but I just didn't ever want to do anything other than what I'm already doing, which is play music.
And you do it great.
And write music. And, Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss. And if you do that, help will show up. And I know this to be true in my experience. Especially in a town like Nashville, if you're good at what you do and you're willing to work, it's a big town. It's a big city, but it's a small town still. And I think the word will get around and people will show up and help.
Well, Thomm, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you the very best on your 2 albums that I worked on especially, but I know you got a lot of great music ahead of you. And
hopefully we'll do more.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.